Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm going to be showcasing my climb up to veteran rank in Season 18 of Go Battle League and reaching number 163 in the world on the global leaderboards in the Spring Cup. Now, I hadn't played the Spring Cup for the first 5 days of the rotation, so I tried a team recommended by SS Thorn, and it ended up working amazingly well. The team features a non-Shadow Empoleon on the lead, with Roserade and Lantern in the back. Empoleon is the ultimate generalist, having play into anything that isn't Poliwrath or Lantern, and the back two Pokemon cover both of those weaknesses. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches. Hopping into the first match, and we've got a mirror lead Empoleon versus Empoleon. I do typically like to stay in this matchup, as switching into the Rose doesn't end up working out amazingly due to the fact that you're consistently taking Steel Wing damage, and your opponent is going to make the Drill Peck before you can make the potential Leaf Storm. So I'm going to stay in this matchup and just fire off Hydro Cannons. Hydro Cannon is going to connect. A lot of people like to catch on the second Hydro Cannon. Me personally, I'm not a big fan of it, so I'm just going to stay in here. I do survive the Hydro. The opponent goes for a Drill Peck, expecting me to try and catch a Hydro onto a Grass type. But I stay in, land the Hydro. Opponent is going to send in their own Roserade, and at this point, I'm fully expecting that this is going to be a mirror team. And I should be in an okay spot. I was able to get some nice Steel Wing damage onto that Roserade before I switched in, and now I can overfarm with my Roserade and go for the Weather Ball. Weather Ball gets the shield. My opponent is going to try and get both of my shields. I'm more than happy to do so, because I'm going to exit with a Roserade that has quite a lot of energy that can hopefully threaten their Lantern in the back. The opponent, they're thinking about it here. Do they send in the third? They do, and that's not a Lantern, that's an Abomasnow. Oh no, this is not looking great for match number 1. I pivot into the Empoleon. Empoleon cannot make it to the Drill Peck, but I do get 3 super effective Steel Wings onto that Abomasnow. I have a 1 HP Roserade, and I have a Lantern. And Lantern has no shields to hide behind. Opponent is going to be able to land a super effective Energy Ball. I was at full health. Let's see, can I hang on? I barely hang on. I wait to make sure they don't get the catch, and I fire off the Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt is resisted, but it gets the Abomasnow low. Lantern gets the farm down. 1 spark KOs the Empoleon, and with the Roserade alive in the back, we take the win. Moving to the next match, leading Empoleon into Dewgong. This is one of the reasons why in this meta, I do think that the regular Empoleon is quite a bit better, as the regular Empoleon does have the ability to withstand a Drill Run from the Dewgong and still have some pretty okay health remaining. Opponent ends up giving me a Steel Wing for free, which is very, very nice. The Drill Run, Empoleon shakes that damage off and is going to return fire with the Drill Peck. This is not going to be able to win me Switch. My opponent is able to tank this, but they actually decide to give up Switch. I'm not quite able to make a Drill Peck, so I save the Empoleon on very low HP, and I send in the Roserade. Now, my Empoleon is very low, but I should be able to make a Drill Peck versus the Dewgong later, because Dewgong has absolutely no fast attack pressure into the Empoleon. I go for the Weather Ball, that KOs. In comes the Dewgong, but I built up to the back-to-back Weather Ball so I could win charge attack priority and knock out the Dewgong. In the back, it is a Tropius. Tropius looking for the farm down, but not able to get there before Roserade makes the Weather Ball. This is looking a bit awkward, as I have a Lantern and they have a Grass type, but this Grass type is also part Flying, which means my electric damage is hitting for neutral. So I have a couple ways that I can win this game. The first of which is if I'm able to successfully catch a Leaf Blade onto the Empoleon, I should be able to win, or if I can make it to that Drill Peck. I know I'm 1 Steel Wing away, so I'm going to go for the Thunderbolt, grab the shield, go for the catch. I don't get the catch, but I survive the Air Slash due to that Steel type resisting it, make the Drill Peck, knock out the Tropius, and despite the fact that we're ABA Water, we beat Double Grass. We see a bit of a tricky lead in the next match, Empoleon versus Ferrothorn. The fact that Ferrothorns are almost always running Flash Cannon instead of Thunder in this meta does help Empoleon in this matchup, as a Thunder could potentially threaten a knockout, whereas a Power Whip definitely will not. They get to the Power Whip at the same time that I get to the Drill Peck, so I am going to go for the Drill Peck as soon as I get it, looking for the CMP tie, but my opponent does not go for it, so I end up giving them an entire Bullet Seed for free. I'm able to get them very low in the Zero Shield. They farm up to back-to-back Power Whips, but I should be able to get a Poison Jab down here with the Roserade. In comes the Roserade, immediate pivot into Shadow Tentacruel, and I'm going to send in Lantern. This is definitely a Lantern bait out, but I really don't want to stay with the Glassy Roserade and take those Shadow Poison Jabs, especially because they're running Acid Spray. If it's a Shadow Tentacruel in this meta, it's almost always running the Acid Spray. As with Acid Spray, it can actually fight back very well against Lantern. Now my opponent can probably just knock me out with a Scald. I don't really want to give up the Lantern just yet, so I decide to commit the shield. In hindsight, maybe I should have let it go and try and Poison Jab down with the Roserade, but I thought that I would just take far too much damage. In the back, they have Golisopod. The timer comes up, but it does not come up in time, and they're going to be able to get to 2 Aerial Aces before I make 2 Weather Balls. So the opponent just played this very well. They needed to bait out the Lantern, which they did, and now Golisopod is unfortunately going to sweep the endgame, as they are at Aerial Ace number 2. So a bit unfortunate there. Maybe if I had just left it all up to Roserade, there could have been a chance, but I didn't, and my opponent takes the win. We see an amazing lead in the next match, Empoleon versus Tropius. Tropius is an extremely common lead in this format, and Empoleon just completely destroys it. A Leaf Blade, Empoleon shakes off that damage no problem, and Empoleon will be able to make 2 Drill Pecks before the opponent is able to land a second Leaf Blade. They're going to tank that damage, save switch into Poliwrath, and I respond with Lantern. Every Poliwrath in this format should be on Dynamic Punch, as Dynamic Punch is able to output some heavy hitting neutral damage onto Lantern. So I do decide to respect the first. I'm going to massively overfarm and then go for the Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt into the Poliwrath. Opponent actually decides to commit the shield. Here, objectively, I shouldn't have shielded this. I should have let the Dynamic Punch go. They end up baiting, but even if it was a Dynamic Punch, that would have been perfectly fine, because I could have survived it, made it to a Thunderbolt, and either one switch or forced the final shield, and either one is winning for me. But instead, I shield the bait, and I'm going to lose switch. However, this can still work for me, as Roserade's energy in the Zero Shield is basically uncounterable. I'm going to farm up with the Rose, get the catch of the move onto the Empoleon. It was only a Leaf Blade, but at this point, it doesn't matter what they have in back. Roserade's energy is too good when shields are down, and they resign the match. Looking for the 4-1 to make it to Veteran, and we've got a mirror lead, but my opponent is actually running the Shadow Empoleon. I fire off this Hydro Cannon, that's going to connect, and this matchup with the Shadow does get a bit more complicated due to the fact that they do extra damage and take extra damage. A second Hydro will actually knock out. I go for the Hydro, and in a surprise, I actually win the CMP tie. I have a pretty high rank Empoleon, so I almost never win that CMP tie. I'm just going to let this go and farm with the Lantern. Opponent Drill Pecks, again, expecting a catch. A lot of people expect a catch out of that matchup, but I really don't want to catch and potentially lock one of my back Pokemons. I'm going to send in the Lantern. Lantern will be met with a Drill Peck for some reason. Not entirely sure why that is. And in the back, they have Tropius and Serperior, and I have a shield advantage and energy advantage Roserade. So this game is in fact over. The opponent, there's nothing they can do. They no-shield a Weather Ball. That's just going to allow me to shield once and fully farm down. And Roserade is just winning this game for me straight up, because the opponent now has the unenviable task of trying to Vine Whip down a Grass Poison type, which is going to be double resisted. So I am going to be committing the shield as they fire off the Aerial Ace. I just need to force the final shield. I could stay in here and win this with Roserade, but I'm going for Veteran with some style points. So I'm going to send in the Lantern, and Lantern will be a superior counter today as Thunderbolt picks up the knockout, securing the 4-1 and getting me to Veteran. I am going to be showcasing a couple extra games, just showcasing different leads and how I like to play it out. Jellicent is a bit of an uncomfortable lead. I'm going to stay in here with the Empoleon and play this out. Again, with this team, I don't like to switch out of a lot of leads, basically unless the opponent leads into a Lantern or a Poliwrath. They're farming up a massive amount of energy. I do tank a Shadow Ball, so I am going to let that through. I'm extremely low, however, and I'm going to fire off the Drill Peck. Drill Peck, they can survive this and Hex down. I decide to get aggressive, switch into the Lantern, and snipe their energy, but I'm immediately met with a Trevenant. Up energy, this is surprisingly not awful for Lantern, as one Seed Bomb is not enough to knock out. I'm up 2 Sparks of energy, and Thunderbolt is going to do some pretty sizable damage to the Glassy Trevenant. Trevenant, they're thinking about it, they will commit the shield. And I don't think that I can double up on Surfs, as 2 Surfs would do more than the Thunderbolt, so I am just going to go for the 1 Thunderbolt that I can get to. My opponent leaves with a massive amount of energy. In comes the Roserade. My opponent does have back-to-back Seed Bombs here. I'm going to commit the shield on the Seed Bomb, throw one more, switch, and get the catch onto the Empoleon. That's the Shadow Ball. And let's see now, in the back, they have their own Roserade, and this game is immediately won. As my Roserade up energy just wins this, they know they have to try and survive a Weather Ball, which they are unable to do, and that's game over. Moving into the next match, we see a very positive lead Empoleon into Tentacruel. Opponent save switches into Dugong, and I'm going to respond with Lantern. My opponent, extremely weak to Lantern so far. They go for the Drill Run, very okay by me. I'm going to look to farm up and then fire off the Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt is going to do a whole lot of damage. The opponent commits the shield. And now I have a choice to make. I think I should have let this go. I was expecting them to go for a bait because they shielded, and they do. And that just hurts to shield an Icy Wind as a Lantern. Oh my goodness, that feels absolutely terrible. Thunderbolt is going to pick up the knockout. They're going to send in the Tentacruel. I make it to the Thunderbolt, and I wait a turn to make sure that they are unable to catch. This is a -1 Thunderbolt, but it's still going to add up. In the back, they have Poliwrath. I send in the Roserade, but I'm down energy, and this is a very negative matchup for Roserade here because I'm down energy. They can spam out Icy Winds. I think my goal is, because I can't make a Weather Ball plus a Leaf Storm, just to go double Weather Ball. I go for the Weather Ball. Opponent calls the bait. Oh my goodness. But I think maybe there's still a chance to win this. The Weather Ball will be shielded. I'm continuing to farm. They're forced to fire off energy. I'm hoping that the one spark that I can get from the Lantern will allow me to Steel Wing down. This will be close. Empoleon can't get the Steel Wing down. With a fraction of HP, they make the Dynamic Punch, and unfortunately, I lose the game. Moving to the next match, leading Empoleon into Abomasnow. Amazing lead. Empoleon with Steel Wing now destroys Abomasnow. They're going to save switch into Tentacruel. I decide to stay in here and fire off the Drill Peck. I potentially could have just brought in the Lantern right away, but I decide, you know what, I'm just going to stay in here, play this out since this is a winning matchup for the Tentacruel, and then I can put the Roserade on the Abomasnow later in the match. So I play it a little bit differently to how I typically would, but let's see how that goes. So I will go for the Drill Peck. The Drill Peck is going to connect, getting that Tentacruel pretty low. This is the non-Shadow Tentacruel, which means they can survive 2 Drill Pecks, but also that 2 Scalds are not going to be enough to knock out, and I will get the Steel Wing farm down. I exit with a lot of energy. I get sniped by the Lantern. I don't even get my move, and now this is suddenly a little bit worrying. I bring in my own Lantern because my Lantern is completely helpless against the Abomasnow, so I'm going to bring in my own Lantern. They go for the Thunderbolt. I'm farming up, and I'm firing off my own Thunderbolt. This will do some decent damage, but my opponent makes the play that loses them the game. They shield the Thunderbolt. A lot of the times, if someone brings in a Pokemon into a mirror, it means that they're weak to whatever you have in the back. But in this case, I'm actually very strong to Lantern in the back. I just needed to throw away my own Lantern because it had no play into the Abomasnow. That's one advantage of me knowing their entire team and them not knowing mine. Ended up playing in my favor there, where now I can just win this game with Roserade. I have 2 shields to hide behind. I can go for the Weather Ball. I mean, this is double super effective damage. This is way more than enough to get rid of the Abomasnow. Goodbye, Abomasnow. Lantern, their only hope is to try and spark down since they can't double up. They can go for the Surf, but they do not have enough energy for 2, so I can commit the shield, make it to the Leaf Storm, and a game that was definitely a lot more complicated than it should have been. I could have just brought in the Lantern into the Tentacruel and won this a lot more convincingly. I end up making it more difficult than it needed to be, but we get the win. Terrible lead in the next match, Empoleon into Lantern. I'm going to save switch into the Roserade. My opponent is going to respond with Tentacruel. Now, some might be wondering why Leaf Storm over Grass Knot. Leaf Storm is a way better move, and Leaf Storm can actually threaten a neutral KO versus a Tentacruel, whereas a Grass Knot absolutely cannot. I'm able to successfully bait, shield the Scald, and make the Leaf Storm. And they're now going to get KO'd unless they burn their final shield, and they are going to burn the final shield and get a farm down. So, at the very least, I've hopefully set up my Lantern to potentially sweep in this endgame. Tentacruel goes for an Acid Spray, so that is going to harshly debuff my defense, and now they're going to fire off the Scald, and Scald still resisted, but due to my lower defense, it's going to do a lot of damage. I farm up. I think I should have farmed up to the back-to-back Drill Pecks here. I was 1 off, because now I decide to stay in and take a Spark before switching. In the back, my opponent has Roserade. I believe I can go double Surf and be able to knock out the Roserade, but unfortunately, these Poison Jabs are just going to do too much damage to my Lantern, where realistically, I don't see a way to win this game. They're going to full send the Leaf Storm because they just need to guarantee that final shield, and now this should just be winning for my opponent. I'm still not in Thunderbolt range yet, but with the Spark damage, I think this is going to knock out. Thunderbolt from the Lantern. I survive on 1 HP and make my own Thunderbolt, but this is just not going to be enough damage. The Thunderbolt will connect. I can send in the Empoleon, go for the last second Hydro Cannon. This will get them into the red health, but unfortunately, it's just not going to be enough. The Lantern survives, and we do drop the match. Hopping into the final match, leading Empoleon into Tropius. Okay, very good lead. We've seen this play out before, and it's very much in our favor. This opponent is going to overfarm as they are going to try and throw their charge attack on good timing. Drill Peck will connect. That does a lot of damage, and they're going to be firing off their Leaf Blade. Leaf Blade, not going to be a problem for the Empoleon. We do get to this next charge attack at the same time. My opponent actually doesn't throw it right away. They end up going for the extra. I do throw right away because I do want to prevent my opponent from potentially winning the zeros. They throw, I'm going to let this through, and now I can Poison Jab down with the Roserade. And again, Roserade, if you're up energy and up shields, is basically unbeatable in this format. I decide to pivot into the Lantern. I was not expecting them to have another grass type back there. Oh my goodness, I hard pivot the Lantern. They send in, oh, this is absolutely awful. They send in the Ferrothorn, and I have made a mistake. The Power Whip connects. This is so bad. I'm farming up. I'm going for the Surf. Unfortunately, the Game Booster Android thing pops up mid-battle. I think that was probably a button that I mistakenly pressed. Pretty sure that was operator error on my part. Suddenly, everything going wrong in this endgame. The Thunderbolt is going to connect. I'm going to send in the Roserade, and I have a choice to make. I decide to call it that it's just going to be the Power Whip, and they do go for the Power Whip. And now I'm going to be committing the shield. They should be switching right away, and I think my only win con is just a full send. Let's see. Are they willing to call the bait? They call the bait! The Leaf Storm connects. I get the farm down, and I'm going to get to farm down the Ferrothorn as well. So a game where so many things went wrong. Leaf Storm able to clutch it out, and we get the win anyway. All in all, this is a team that does have its weaknesses. As I mentioned at the start, Lantern and Poliwrath leads you have to switch out of, but most anything else you can stay in. The team as a whole is very weak to something like a Shadow Quagsire. I only saw one in my climb up, and it completely wrecked me. Unfortunately, it was the day before I started recording, so I played, I think, 2 sets the day before, and then ended up kind of cruising to Veteran today. So if Shadow Quagsire picks up in popularity, then this team may not function quite as well, but in the current moment, there's a lot of Tropius, there's a lot of Poliwrath, there's a lot of Tentacruel, and this team has a lot of play into all of those. So I do think this team, as long as the Spring Cup meta remains consistent, should continue to be a very strong climbing team. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.